Happening now, we'd like to welcome our viewers from across North America and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room, episode 200 for December the 2nd, 2020. My name is Wes Fryer, and I'm joining you from Oklahoma City, where we're a little rainy tonight. I am the Technology Innovation Specialist at Cassidy School, but I also teach 5th grade Spanish this year until January the 8th, and I'm teaching 5th and 6th grade media literacy, which I will be sharing on the quote-unquote virtual main stage of ISTE tomorrow at, I think, 10:15 Central Time. So excitement. But I am not only joined by the guru of the North from Montana, Jason Neiffer, I'm also joined by Eric Langhorst. So I'll send the shout out to Eric. Eric, welcome to the EdTech Situation Room. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks, guys. It was episode 200, so I just wanted to drop in and say congratulations. That is an amazing milestone for any podcast. I'm an 8th grade virtual teacher this year in Liberty, Missouri. I teach completely virtually 8th grade U.S. history. Big fan of the show. I was telling these guys I listen to the show often when I'm mowing my lawn, I'm working in the garage, I'm driving in my car. My family listens to you when we're on long trips out to Wyoming to see family. So big fan of the show and just enjoy listening to you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Jason, welcome to episode 200.
Thank you. I was just thinking a little bit earlier about how, like, when you first start, like, episode 10 seems like a big deal, and then it's 20, and then it's 50, but 200 is it's a long stretch of episodes. And I was trying to remember, I think it's 100 episodes is the mark in television shows where you can syndicate and make money. And then 200 is like, that's Seinfeld numbers, right? And, not that I think our show is of syndication value, but we have hit Seinfeld levels of episodes. So I think that's certainly a mark worth celebrating.
Hey, we did have, was it in Montana? It was some local PBS station at one point that asked us if we could syndicate early.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, but I don't think they did that. So that was when Eric was still on the show. So he left, and things just went down.
It went downhill from there.
I was the big market there. Yeah,
that's right. Absolutely. Well, Jason, what are we going to do tonight on episode 200 of this show?
Well, we have a series of links, and you can always find our links at our website, edtechsr.com/links. It heads to our massive size Google document where you can literally go back to episode 1 if you like and see what was on our mind back when we started on January 27th, 2016. But tonight, we'll be talking about a variety of kind of not EdTech, technology stories that have kind of an educational lens. We got some tech politics to talk about. We've got some political polarization to talk about. I'm going to ramble on about Apple again, and I imagine listeners that have been listening the last couple of weeks were like, "We just buy a stupid MacBook already," so you can stop rambling on about it. We have a number of security articles to share tonight, a couple hardware announcements, some Google stuff, media literacy, actually a lot of links tonight, privacy surveillance, web development, miscellaneous, our favorite category, and then, of course, our Geeks of the Week. And Wes, you did a lot of link sharing tonight. You want to start us off somewhere?
You bet. Well, I put this first one under tech politics. We're not a political show. We're not changing to a political show, but there are some interesting politics that are affecting, not only the technology issues of today, but also perhaps, the next few years. So this is Ars Technica today on December 2nd. The headline is Trump to Congress, repeal Section 230 or I'll veto military funding. And as we've talked about on the show before, Section 230 of the Communications, I think it's the 1996, Communications Decency Act, is the piece of legislation that shields online platforms like Twitter and Facebook from liability that, lawsuits basically that can happen because of content that's either posted there and kept there or content that's taken off. And of course, our president has been upset about some of his tweets being, tagged and labeled, and some the way in which the platforms basically have been moderating content. So the article says we really would move into strange territory and unfamiliar territory if this happens, because since we would say modern web, Web 2.0, interactive web has been around, we've had this act, and so folks think maybe this isn't going to happen. It's not going to be that big of a deal. But I think it is interesting to see, how there's not a lot of policy pushes happening from the White House right now that we know about, but one of them would directly, impact technology and social media. So any predictions from you guys on what would happen? I'll say one more thing. I, signed up for Mastodon, which is this federated Twitter, basically, which people made fun of me. What are you doing with this? But like, email's federated, so you don't have to just use, like back in the day, America Online or Gmail, right? They all interoperate. Well, Mastodon's the same way. Anybody can spin up, just like a mail server, anybody can spin up a Mastodon account and they interoperate. Well, the one that I had signed up with a few months ago actually was saying we're shutting down. And it sounded like it was because they were anticipating Section 230 protections going away, and that they would be, basically sued for the content that they would have. And then I think someone else has bought them. And honestly, I haven't logged on for weeks. So thoughts, Jason, about Section 230? And do you think is this going to be the tech correction? Are we going to see something happen here?
I keep reading about this in part because I want to kind of figure out like what made this mean to me personally. But I guess the problem with this is that, if you're looking to destroy big tech, yeah, I think getting rid of Section 230 could introduce a lot of legal challenges in all directions, right, regarding some of these platforms. But in the end, I just don't know how you make platforms responsible and not users. Like it feels like that has to be an exchange that then tears apart the internet. And I've heard a lot of analysis on Tech Podcast about this, and I'm kind of cribbing a little bit from some of those pieces. But you don't really have a constitutional right to post on Twitter when there are other ways to express your views, and to try to turn every platform potentially into a constitutionally protected place to say whatever you want, especially since what a lot of the people are complaining about are things that maybe not a huge majority, but a majority of people would say are abhorrent or somehow dangerous, or maybe something that is not something that we really want, openly available. I think that just gets really sticky really quickly and gets rid of the nature of kind of open internet platforms. But I know that you're all about the Mastodon, Wes. You can find me on Parler because that's where I'm hanging out. I did get in a Parler account, and it's bizarro Twitter. That's the way I would describe it, is that it looks a lot like Twitter. You can post as long of a thing as you want. Like there's no limits on so in a lot of ways it's kind of like Medium in that you can post longer articles on it, but there's clearly no, I guess I don't know how to put this. There's no adult supervision on Parler, right? And so, and like everyone is like going out of their way to, I think, say things like,
set themselves on fire.
To get attention. And then there was a clever term that I read about these a couple of weeks ago that I can't remember, but there's been a lot of fake news sites in Montana, for example, that look like a news site, but are, oftentimes run by the same like 7 or 8 sites, and they sound like something official, like the Montana Post Gazette Dispatch or something, that has been a real problem in Montana. And in some cases, it's the same 2 or 3 people that are pushing them on. And it's interesting because those sites tend to be traded much more aggressively on Parler than they do on Twitter. But I don't know. It's hard to know. One of the reasons why I read a variety of views is that I like to be challenged, and I also like to know what people I disagree with say. And so that, I think that helps me. I can't change my mind occasionally when I'm presented with new data. So I guess from that standpoint, different social networks that may support one worldview or another is interesting from that standpoint. But I think this kind of threat to hook military funding to this, thing that a lot of people said would be dangerous to the internet, I just think it's mostly embroiled in chaos.
Well, the article also points out.
How about you, Eric?
Before, we'll throw it to Eric here in a second.
Yeah.
before this happened, the tendency was, weirdly enough, for platforms not to moderate, because they were coming down more on platforms that were moderating for how they were moderating. So it was having this weird effect of almost a hands-off approach. And it also points out that there's some proposals to modify the act and make some changes in the law, but basically nobody knows. So it's certainly something that would have a big impact. Eric, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that in particular, this threat, I mean, we're talking less than 50 days and tying it to something as big as defense spending for the entire, military. I mean, I think that it's kind of a threat that's never going to actually see the light of day. But I mean, it is interesting that, we're seeing more moderation with Twitter and, primarily with politics and the president and all these different things. So I don't think that this threat's going to go anywhere, but obviously the idea of more moderation and controlling it's not going to go away. So, I mean, I think it's going to be with us for a while. I just think as a taking a step back, thinking about like how important social media has become in politics and just in life in general. I looked the other day on when my Twitter anniversary was, and it's like December 12th of, I think, 2008. So like, just imagining 12 years ago when we were thinking about, is this going to be more than what I ate for breakfast and stuff? And now it's how it's how people, announce major things in government and politics and policy. And
how many people have gotten fired on Twitter in the last
I mean,
a few years? Crazy.
Yeah.
Right. Well, one other article in this category, this is also Ars Technica, and this involves the FCC. Senate rushes to confirm Trump FCC nominee in order to hinder Biden admin. So obviously, a new administration coming in, there are, huge numbers of officials that have to be appointed and put into place. And so I guess because of Ajit Pai, I'm not going to say his name right, because of the current FCC chair stepping down, there is, and anyway, this nominee, if approved, would make a 2-2 Democrat-Republican board or whatever, and then they would have to wait for Senate approval for a fifth person who would split them. And the person that has been now nominated specifically has endorsed the president's views on the Section 230, and evidently, is to try to stop that. So, there's going to be a lot of pieces to pick up. Not to reveal my political sense too much, but yeah, it's going to be challenging no matter what. In 50 days when the new administration takes office. It is critical, I think, that we have this be a nonpartisan issue when it comes to like the digital divide, E-rate funding, the need that we have to increase, broadband capacity, especially in rural areas, but really everywhere. And so, hopefully those kinds of issues might not be politicized as much. It would sure be nice to see that. But anyway, those were a few thoughts from the political side. So, Jason, any other thoughts? Do you want to take us to another article?
Yeah, let's go elsewhere. In part because all I do is think about politics all day. Let's do a couple of kind of techie ones. This one was interesting because this is such a follow-up that we talked about a long time ago. This is a reminder from ZDNet on December 1st that Google Cloud Print is dead in 1 month. And the only reason I want to mention this is because I'm almost certain that most schools have figured this one out, because this has been going on for at least 2 years. They've announced that Google Cloud Print's dying. But I will tell you that I personally have had to kind of tweak this, because we've been using Google Cloud Print in my home for, years now, in part because we bought a Brother black and white laser printer, a workhorse black and white laser printer for, just average printing. And it had Google Cloud integrated into it, and it was super easy to get it into our account. I shared it with my wife, and it was done. So my Chromebook, her MacBook, and my Windows PC all print to it without issue, because it was super easy to utilize Google Cloud Print for that. And as it turns out, because of the way I have my network set up, it hasn't been, because it goes to the internet first and then back to my printer. With that service unavailable, it's been a little more challenging to get the plethora of devices in my home to all see and then print to that that printer. And if you kind of set and forget a home printer device that's utilizing signing into the Google Cloud to be able to utilize printing across your home, you may have to think about other alternatives. And it's interesting because I've been watching some of the discussion on the Google admins group about some folks that haven't really planned around this. Most people have already dealt with this, but it's not necessarily as easy as it looks at face value. And to kind of give an example of this, I do have a Chromebook. They use a system called Cups, which is a Linux-based way of accessing printers. The reason why I know that is because when I have used Linux as a desktop or laptop operating system, it's not super easy to configure. And as it turns out, the Chromebook version of this is not super easy to configure. So if you think maybe you bought a laser printer, inkjet printer that you remember signing into Google to do this, just know 1 month from now, this is going away.
You may want to consider just stopping printing, which is a joke. Jason, at that, Jason has frozen.
Oh.
We have not actually moved because we've been running that cloud print on a local server. Don't run a speed test, Jason, if that's what you're doing right now. We have been running a server at school, or we have for years, that would allow for Google Cloud Print for Chromebooks to work with these multifunction, copiers, and basically anything that had a Windows driver, you could run this Cloud Print service and then make it Cloud Print. And it was really cool. And it was a little wonky, and sometimes when that server would go down, things had to be brought up in the right order. And sometimes, anyway, it took the right touches to get it going again, but it's been solid. Does anybody know why Google ditched this and stopped supporting it? Because that's kind of a mystery to me. We've had weird things happen with Google charging for stuff. And, the Google Tour Creator is, we talked about, is wiped out. So any insights or guesses on that?
I haven't seen anything, but then again, the thing that's so surprising about that is I know that early on this was sometimes challenging to set up, especially when you were trying to print from Chromebooks that you're first rolling out. But what I loved about this is it was really set and forget, right? Like, we started using this in the office, in part because I was able to set up basically a little mini print network inside of our network, because all of our inter-office people are signed into our Google domain, which is not the University of Montana's. It's just our sub-organizations. And then I give the 6 people that I want access to give them access to printing. So, I don't know anyone that disliked this as a strategy, especially if they were all in on a Google suite. But, Google also killed Google Reader, which the super nerds loved. So,
yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Any thoughts, Eric?
I have not had a printer at my house for, I don't know, 15 years. And I teach in a school, so I just send it remotely to our copier and it gets done. And I benefit from the IT guys figuring that stuff out. So on this topic, I have nothing. I just, I use my school network for that. So.
But pretty sophisticated school printing to be able to do that remotely. That is pretty slick.
That's cool.
Yeah. We can send stuff to the copier from anywhere in the building, and
the good news for the Neiffer household is I think the apples are returning. So perhaps the world of Bonjour will make the air print and everything. Just, you'll be printing from your watch, within a couple weeks, Jason. Just
soon enough. Yeah, that'll be real exciting. Well, that's an easy segue. We have 2 quick Apple articles. And I noticed, Wes, you have one about Apple Fitness Plus. You want to talk about that one?
Sure. So I think it was back in September. Apple was talking about, did I put this one there, miscellaneous? Or do we have an Apple category? Oh, we have an Apple category. Apple Fitness Plus instructors tease upcoming service as late 2020 launch nears. And this is from 9 to 5 Mac on the 29th. I was actually really impressed. I tend to watch all the Apple events in their entirety, although sometimes they get a little long. But look, you can't see the evidence, but I need encouragement to exercise. And I have an Apple Watch, and I think that Apple is fantastic in the way in which they're helping us. First of all, they're focusing on privacy, but number 2, giving us more data about biometrically how we're doing in our lives. Like, this is, I think if money wasn't an object, we would all benefit from more regular check-ins with our doctor where they would do more labs and find stuff. I mean, we all probably heard stories about people who's like, yeah, they just randomly found this. And then, and sometimes they find stuff early, et cetera. So I think that side of the health of Apple's ecosystem is wonderful. And I also think that, encouragement to be fit. You don't actually have to go get a gym membership. There's just, you can walk in your neighborhood. You can, do simple exercises that don't require a ton of equipment and expense. And so I think this is really positive. I'm not going to be making any promises here, but I have been looking, among other things, in terms of just wellness and health goals for myself, thinking about how am I going to be, including more exercise and fitness. So yay, Apple. And, I just want more encouragement on this lines. Eric, do you have a smartwatch, and where have you been with all of the smartwatch stuff?
I did have a Fitbit years ago. It's probably been maybe 4 or 5 years, but I used to have a Fitbit. It did encourage me to kind of keep track a little bit of how much I was walking and stuff. I then used my phone for a little bit. The pedometer and stuff wasn't as accurate, but it's been interesting. My daughter's in 7th grade virtual. And so for PE, one of the ways that she can log in and show like how much she's done is if they do have a smartwatch, they can like upload that data and that kind of stuff. So I know there's been a lot of Black Friday or Cyber Monday deals on Fitbits and stuff. So I'm not opposed to it. It's not probably on the top of my priority list right now for stuff to buy, but I think that it can encourage you to kind of get up and move in when you can see how much you're actually doing. So,
yeah. Well, it's one of those things too, with just technology. You don't necessarily, sometimes the tech people get, put in this geek camp where you're sitting in a, dark room, playing video games all, for hours and hours. That happens, of course. But I think it's really good how we have an increased focus on screen time and the awareness of how important it is to live a balanced life, and then, go outside, exercise, those things.
I know the last time we talked, Jason, we were talking about virtual teaching and stuff. And I know Jason brought up the fact, get up and move around. And so like, I'm actually right now, I'm at a standing desk. I took an old dresser before the pandemic and refinished it and stuff. But this is typically I teach and I stand and can walk around. And so I do feel like I'm moving a little bit during the day. I'm not probably getting my 10,000 steps in by doing this, but I do feel like I'm at least not sitting in a sedentary pose the entire day. So, but I know we talked about that last time a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and that one of the reasons why that I was so stunned, and I loved using a Fitbit, is because when I went from being a classroom teacher to working at a desk all day, it's just so shocking how much I was walking around my classroom. And when I've taught at the U, I tend to be, you guys will probably get this reference, but none of my students ever did. I'm kind of a Donahue teacher. I'm in the audience with the microphone, right? And I'm shoving that microphone in kids' face, right? That's certainly the way I used to teach social studies. And, that's just not the reality when I'm on the phone all day, right? So, or on a Zoom call. And as exciting as Zoom calls are, they're not real active. And I've tried even things like treadmill desks, right? Like I would go downstairs. There was one in the College of Ed at the U, and and I'd have to put it on really slow because I'm not coordinated enough to go very fast. But I was trying to answer email, so yeah, you need something to kind of tell you how much your life has changed when you're doing stuff like that.
Apple article, I think, Jason.
One other, big quick Apple article. We'd mentioned this a couple weeks ago, and the only reason why I'm saying this is because this may slightly delay the purchase of my Apple laptop, which is forthcoming. But we talked about how that Apple made a very distinct decision to utilize the 13-inch MacBook Air, the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and then the Mac Mini. Like they picked those form factors first, in part because I'm sure the technology is ready, but they really wanted an entry level before they released the professional stuff, in part to kind of talk professionals into believing that the M1 chip could work. And the article is all over the place. The one I found for the show tonight is from Gadgets 360, talks about how that there is a MacBook Pro 16 in the works. The MacBook Pro 16 was introduced about a year ago. It's the replacement to the MacBook Pro 15. I've used a MacBook Pro 15 very briefly. It was kind of a hand-me-down at work before we signed it to another staff member. I loved it. it. Beautiful, big, bright screen, but man, it was a hefty thing to carry around. It is really interesting that they're talking about the difference between the M1 chip and the professional chip, which would be an M1X is what they're calling it. It's going to add 4 performance cores to it. It will also likely come with a much larger battery too, which is that bigger form factor, which means it should get decent battery life. But I have decided not to put in every time I find a YouTube video that's, oh, how great the M1 chip is, because that was what I did the previous 2 episodes of the show. But yeah, I'm super excited. It looks so great, and coming soon to an office near me. So
the fact that we're talking about 12 cores in a laptop,
yeah,
I mean, does that not just blow your mind? And remember, Apple used to have a 17-inch portable. You know, they
back in
had
the
like
day.
17, 15, 13. So interesting. Well, you know, years from now, it could be a doorstop. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, with all this new, stuff that Apple's coming out just for power, as a virtual teacher, I'm always thinking like, how this is going to change stuff. My whole classroom is that laptop, right? I mean, I have a second monitor and stuff, but instead of the district investing in physical things for a teacher, if you're a virtual teacher, are they going to start investing more into, let's give you a nicer, I mean, I have a MacBook Air right now, 13-inch. I mean, it works great. But like, if you can really kind of like help a virtual teacher and boost up their machine, could they invest a little bit more in that? Because they're not going to be investing in some of the physical stuff. So maybe timing wise, that might be something that some districts are looking at. For a virtual teacher, we're going to really give you something nice, which hopefully will eliminate some of the glitches and stuff like that. So,
well, yesterday
Absolutely.
I just did a workshop for our elementary teachers, tips for remote learning. We've been face-to-face since August 14th, and we've had kids, and then some teachers go remote, and then we had our high school go remote for 2 weeks. So we've had some in and outs, but the whole school hasn't gone remote. And with numbers being what they are, who knows? My number one thing was second monitor, whether you teach from your classroom, using that extended desktop feature and being able to, detach the webcams and put your kids on the big screen and then use your screen for other things. Or somebody told me today his wife for like $99 picked up a 27-inch HDMI screen. I don't know if it was on Amazon or whatever. I was like, really?
Yeah.
Incredible. And I think that's an important investment.
Great monitors for about $100. I mean,
Yep.
I have a second monitor on my desk, and then up here I bought one of those Amazon basic arms, and I can move it around. But I can't imagine doing this now without a second monitor. And I never used a second monitor until this fall when I started teaching virtually full time.
Yep.
But that's the number one thing. If somebody says, "Well, what should I do to upgrade?" I'm like, you gotta spend the money and get a second monitor. It'll change completely the way you're doing everything. So,
and one really interesting thing I want to mention that you inspired me to think about, Eric, is that I've had a lot of conversations with teachers that are and not quite remote. They're in the hybrid, or they're trying to do a lot of live Zoom classes. It's a little bit different than teaching fully online. But one thing that's also true is that if your hardware is old and slow and not keeping up with the technology, and running a virtual meeting on a computer or participating in a virtual meeting on a computer is a relatively processor and memory intensive activity. And I know that, and I won't mention specifics, a family member of mine that teaches elementary school, I was talking to a couple of days ago, and she was using a 5-year-old Chromebook that wasn't a premium Chromebook when it was purchased 5 years ago. And, was having problems running Zoom meetings for her elementary school students because it was just too taxing on the processor. And a lot of times when I think about, like, there is a lot of legitimate ways you can use older hardware in a school, right? That you have to keep it up, and you have to make sure that's refreshed, and it's using an old spinning hard drive. Replacing it with an SSD will make a big difference, and maxing out RAM and that sort of thing. But the bottom line is, if you're spending 8 hours a day on a machine, that if it's slow, or if the keyboard's terrible, or the trackpad's terrible, or you have a tiny monitor, or it's a tiny screen, I just don't think it's going to be really trying on your patience, and you're just not going to be as interested or efficient or engaged in the process. And I think that is a conversation that will likely happen after this is all over with too. If we're making kids look at a computer or spend time on a computer 4 or 5 hours a day in a one-to-one environment, let's make sure they have something that's really conducive to learning.
I'm thinking like
Absolutely.
little tiny stuff, like on my MacBook Air, I can't put as many students on the screen as I would if I had an
Right.
updated one. So like I have classes with 38 kids. So it's a little tiny thing, but I could see all of my kids if I have an updated one. Right now I've got half of them at a time, and it's just a little thing, but I mean, being able to see your whole class at one time would be a nice thing to be able to do. So
Absolutely.
Are
Yeah,
you
and
all Zoom or Google Meet, or what are you all using as a
we
platform,
use
Eric?
we use Zoom, and our district for the virtual teachers upgraded to like the, I don't know what it is, professional.
Zoom Pro, whatever.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
And I'm going to mention one quick thing because I just remembered. I'll put the link in the show notes. I bought 2 monitors this year. I had old big industrial Dell monitors. They were flat panels, but big industrial Dell monitors that weighed a lot of weight. And I replaced it with a larger flat panel 4K monitor. And then I have a side monitor that's flipped on its side. That side monitor, it goes up and down between $100 and $109, but it's just the standard issue HP business monitor, but it's perfect. It's really nice. If you spend $220 on 2 of these bad boys, and I couldn't agree with you more, Eric, getting a telescoping arm to clip onto a desk makes it really convenient. It looks really cool too. And that's a really great setup, especially if, again, you're on a computer all day long, because that's the way it's working.
It's the one, I got one behind me right there above my desk. So.
Nice. Yeah. And I have mine on a standing desk, so I can, I have a Home Depot, work table that it has a hand crank that goes up and down, but it's the poor man's standing desk. And it's, that with monitors clipped to it. And, it's a pretty great workstation.
Well, enough of this positive hardware talk. Let's get to some dystopian media literacy stuff.
Do I need to get my tinfoil hat for you guys?
Absolutely.
No,
I actually wore one. I don't remember what episode that was, but
I remember.
Yeah. So I just conflated some categories. We had security separate from privacy surveillance. These things can all be kind of woven together. New York Times, November 27th. Amazon wants to get even closer, skin tight. And this is a great article by Kara Swisher, who, if you don't follow her and read her, man, she is amazing. And so she actually is kind of telling a little story about her family and home and the ways in which she's embraced the, smart speakers and Amazon and not really fearing any of that. But the article is subtitled, "In Pursuit of Surveillance as a Service, Jeff Bezos is intent on recording even our moods, how much personal data to give to Amazon." And back to what we were talking about on Fitbits and smartwatches and that kind of thing. We've mentioned surveillance capitalism and, a documentary, The Social Dilemma, stuff like that. There's a dark side to tech companies or companies of any kind, collecting so much data about us. And when you understand, I think we do a little bit in the model of surveillance capitalism, which is what Amazon, is driving a lot of their sales on, right? Because the more they know about all of us or each one of us individually, the easier they can nudge us with an advertisement, with a suggestion for us to purchase something. But it's not just that. It's also that data that can then be bought by whoever wants to use it. And then we can have the political ads or anything else like that. So excellent article, basically saying Amazon is going even further. And it's just, this is more of the same. It's the surveillance capitalism model, but it gets into that biometrics, moods, and some of the stuff, we've heard about this with online learning, with face tracking and stuff like that, right? It's, we've talked a little bit about proctoring exams and how, there's been some big uproar and hoopla over that in some certain places. So I think this is a great article, and I'm not in the Amazon camp, but I know you are, Jason. Eric, where are you with smart speakers, and what do you guys think?
I think the first one we bought was an Echo, but we don't even have that plugged in anymore. We have, I think, 5 Google Home Minis maybe throughout the house. I listen to podcasts or, hey, play NPR, that kind of stuff. But probably the thing we use it the most for is as a timer. I mean, like my wife's constantly like, hey, set a timer for 15 minutes, that kind of stuff. So we're a Google family in that regard.
Okay. Jason, what are your thoughts about the sort of mission creep of and receding privacy? With all of this and Amazon, are you thinking? Are you ready to go? What's the Apple smart speaker that's like ridiculously expensive? You ready to order one of those?
The
now?
HomePod. That's part of the problem, right? Is that, and I'm sure the HomePod that's got the little like fuzzy thing on top that goes.
I'm sure it sounds great. Yeah,
I'm sure it sounds great, and I'm sure it's amazing looking, right? Because that's Apple, and I can't believe I'm buying back into this ecosystem. But the thing I would say is that. I like the Amazon hardware, right? Like the first generation Echo. In fact, I have one sitting on my desk here, although I will note for the record that I have it on mute. I don't talk to it ever. And I was just double checking to make sure that that I have credibility here. This is on mute. And part of the problem for me is that, and I use it as much as a Bluetooth speaker than I do as a network-based speaker, because it's also a wonderful Bluetooth speaker. But the bottom line is that I don't... I have to have a little bit of trust of Amazon there, and they have an awful lot of my data because I buy a lot of stuff on Amazon, right? So they have a lot of that already. The other article that relates to this is from Throd.com on November 24th. Talks about the Amazon Sidewalk service. And I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this one. It was announced around the same time. It's basically that you have to turn it on, but it basically because Amazon saves your Wi-Fi stuff in the cloud now, your Wi-Fi information, and the idea is that if you have speakers or IoT devices kind of at the edge of your network and it isn't getting a totally great signal, that it might try to tap into your neighbor's signal if they're also on Amazon. That's why it's called a sidewalk service. And Paul Thurrott, I think, very correctly calls this really creepy. And also, I don't want other people's stuff on my network, right? I lock that down for a really good reason. And I mean, I think there's a lot of sense in the ecosystem in Amazon. And frankly, it works better for me than the Google stuff does, in that it seems to, it works for the stuff that we use in my home, right? And my wife and I use. But yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago who is a former IT director. He runs a private IT shop in Montana, and he said that they had been having problems on their home network because all their IoT devices were creating something that was diminishing the output of their Wi-Fi. And I thought to myself, we've been having some minor issues here, and our Google Wi-Fi hardware at home is getting to be on 3-4 years old now. So, maybe it's time for an upgrade. Maybe it's not, but all of our IoT devices, which includes a half dozen speakers, a bunch of plugs, a bunch of other devices that are, on our network. I mean, that could be slowing things down, right? And, maybe I want to consider going in another direction, but, we still have so much security questions about all this extra stuff we're adding to our homes. And I'd be willing to bet $1 if we went back to our first shows in 2016, 10 times in the first 6 months, we talked about the security problems in Internet of Things devices. Oh, yeah. And 4 years later, it doesn't seem like, almost 5 years later, it doesn't seem like we have much resolution to those problems. 32 devices online right now at our house. Oh, I want to check mine because I've been mocked before with a number of devices by someone on this podcast.
That was a fun question, and it probably still is, to ask people. And before apps like the Google Wi-Fi app, you had to just guess. But asking folks, how many devices do you have at your house that connect to the internet? 25.
25 right now.
I got you beat. Yeah. I've been adding some smart plugs and got the lights all around that come on at dusk and go off at sunrise. Although we had a mystery because they were going off, and I thought it was my wife, because if anybody in the house says turn off the lights and they say the activation word, all the lights go off that are on smart plugs. And it turns out it was our youngest daughter who we had to fix her blind, and she wanted to turn that light off, and so she was the one doing it. But it was like, I know I don't have a if this then that recipe, what's going on, so anyway, 21st century problem.
Very much so. Let me see. Let me do another quick one here, just because I like to do this as a regular reminder. CNN Business talks about on November 19th. Yes, people are still using 1234566 and password as their password, and I highly doubt that most of the target audience of our podcast is using 1234566. But if you're using the same simple password everywhere, you should not do that. Use a password manager. I would also note that I've become, obviously a big password manager guy. I got a couple light hacks in the last couple of years. It happened again earlier this week. I received a notification in email on Monday morning that an account that I don't really remember creating, but it's not really a big deal. Like, it would have been a site I would have created an account on, that someone had logged in, that there was a new login from a device. And I looked at the password that was saved there. It was a long compromised password. I knew it was a long compromised password. And if you've been around on the internet for 25 years, like a lot of adult users, there's probably an account or two in your day that, if you were utilizing, short, insecure passwords, it's probably been hacked. So please use a unique password on every website. Please use a password manager.
Absolutely. Eric, what do they do at your district in terms of resets? Are they still having you guys reset them every 6 months or something, or do you know what they're doing with that? And do you have two-step required?
We're not two-step required, but I think it's every 6 months we're required to do it. Yeah.
Right.
So we're not using two-step yet. So
yeah. Well, hey, the holidays we've had the Thanksgiving holidays, Christmas holidays are coming up. Maybe it's a great time to do that audit. And if you're using a password manager, even Google now in Chrome has an ability to compare your passwords. I notice how it frequently, pops up when I log into an old site or something like that and said, hey, this has been reused, or you want to audit your password. So we need to take Google up on that. Let's do another one for this security, privacy, surveillance. This is ZDNet on November 27th. Microsoft 365's productivity score. It's a full-blown workplace surveillance tool, says critic. And of course, this is a headline that's written to be as harsh as possible to get everybody to click on it. But basically, Microsoft came out, I think, a little bit after the pandemic began, or maybe it was out earlier. It was announced in October, I guess, but maybe it had been out. April was the original announcement. And so the Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella, said, quote, "We've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months due to remote working. So Microsoft released the productivity score feature in preview this May." And he goes on. But basically, if you have this turned on, you can see how much or how little folks are using your Microsoft 365 suite. I don't know if Google has anything, comparable to this. I can see where this would be of interest, but I also certainly can understand how this, again, maybe seems creepy and, can be seen as surveillance. But look, Microsoft is not the big offender here. The big offender are companies, and I don't have any of these links in the show notes tonight, that are actually turning on, keystroke logging, webcam tracking. There's a lot of spyware that is out there for people. Some of it actually masquerades as parental controls, monitor your kids, but it's actually used as like stalkerware that people will do things to, ex-girlfriends and boyfriends, probably. I don't know. That'll be sexist, I guess, in thinking that more that's males, doing that to females. But anyway, the software is out there, and companies are using these kind of things to track folks as well. So, do you guys think this is creepy at all, or is this just a good faith effort on Microsoft's part to try and give IT admins and organizational admins more insights that are helpful into their organizational use of technology?
I mean, I would say it probably for me is a little bit more on the creepy side. I think there's other ways you can measure productivity other than doing that. I don't know. I guess I look at things as like a teacher, and I feel like my district trusts me to get my stuff done. And I mean, if I knew that every single key that I typed in was going to be logged and they were checking to see how productive I was on using certain apps and stuff, that'd be a little creepy. So.
And crazy to think about employees having to deal with that. I mean, because that is happening now.
And I guess I would add a second thing is that trying to come up with single scores or bottom line measures can oftentimes lose a lot of data. My guess is that if you took the three of us, 3 tech-savvy educators and that have, workflows that work for us, that if you tried to add objective measures to that, or seemingly objective measures to that, try to measure productivity, it would look pretty different, even though I'm pretty sure the 3 of us get our jobs done in spades on a regular basis, right? And I think that's part of the problem. A lot of people want to boil things down to a single measure, and it's part of the criticism of standardized testing, right? That trying to tell a complex story with a single score is probably not going to lead you to much seriousness. Now that said, like when we evaluate teachers in my organization, we do look at things like response time to grade assignments. We look for, and this is a little more subjective, but deep feedback on individual assignments, based on standards we set for our teachers. But if we miss the boat and we look at what seems like an objective measure and we get it wrong, and the teacher explains to us as part of our evaluation process, oh no, I'm doing it this way, we're like, great, thanks for letting us know. Like, that's something. There are multiple ways to do things. Sometimes there's not, but most times that there are. And I worry about that both in context of monitoring employees. I also worry about that in context of students as well. That I know for sure, running a virtual school, that we have students that don't log in that often, but are getting quality assignments in and doing the work they need to do. It's about the output, not about the measures internally getting to that output, right? And we have students that struggle pretty mightily, that spend a lot of time inside of individual lessons, and maybe the per minute value isn't as great, but they're still learning in the end. So I think I read the articles and I just thought that it seems so short-sighted for what seems like been a lot of revolution going on at Microsoft in the way they approach the world.
What you did share, though, in that answer is something we don't have right now at our school, because we're not using a Canvas or a true full-blown LMS. We're mainly using Google Classroom, and we've got a student information system that we cross-post grades to. Being able to have a robust LMS that can really give you some information about what's going on can be academically extremely helpful. I mean, number one, I think you've told me, or you've mentioned in the past, Jason, how you have different triggers that can help get students assistance. And
Yes.
So if certain things haven't happened, you didn't log in within this number of days, you haven't, posted this or whatever, you can get those folks help. I mean, I've been amazed by some of my 6th graders, who have been in our middle school for over a year, and they didn't know their login to our information system, which is where they're supposed to be able to, see their report cards and their grades and things like that. And, we just don't have that kind of system set up. So I think that would be a shout out to say, hey, if you're not using a full-blown robust LMS, you need to get there. And if you have one and you don't have those kind of triggers that can help you help students and maybe also help teachers, then that would also be a really important thing to do, because
Right.
Remote learning and hybrid learning and whatever you're going to call all this is just going to keep on, being bigger and bigger in the years ahead.
Well, and I would say that we have a design concept internally that I kind of created a phrase for. Someday we'll be able to have the staffing and time to do this fully, but I call it Accordion Design, which is that a course, especially an online course, really needs to be as big or as small as the user that's using the course, right? We have students that are not very tech savvy, that may have particular learning issues. Their reading level is lower, their tech savvy is lower, their deep reading skills are lower, that could use things like closed notes or various structures to help approach the learning. But we have some students where literally that's going to be an impediment to their learning. They're able to really navigate with relatively few instructions the curriculum, and they're going to be better served by a course that's much smaller and much more svelte. And we've talked about, this is one of the great things about Moodle that other LMSs aren't necessarily as adept at, but Moodle is a much more of a blank canvas than other LMSs, and that you can build a lot of interesting looking things that look nothing like Moodle. But if you are a learner in the first 3 weeks and you've never taken a course from us before, then the course probably should have more instructions available to you because you're new. But once you're going in 3 or 4 weeks, then that course should automatically shrink as you're being successful. You can turn on the extra guidance, but like an accordion, it could be bigger or smaller depending on how you need it. And that would be kind of a big data style a collection of data to be able to determine that. But here's the problem, though, right? Like, as creepy as I find that Microsoft stuff, those scores could be used very, I think, meaningfully. And they could also be used not very meaningfully, right? In that if you're making judgments on it, or you're doing something terrible like posting the scores, or making management decisions based off them without collecting other data, that's why I think that stuff comes off as creepy. Because the bottom line is, if you're misusing it, then all the data in the world is just going to build ill will.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we started a couple minutes late, so we've got about 10 minutes. Jason, what other articles would you like to hit tonight?
Well, I don't think I mentioned this yet. And if I have, Wes, then just smile and pretend that I'm not losing things out of my mind. But there was an article a couple of weeks ago that I don't think we covered, but I just wanted to mention it because of a specific issue. This is from Public Press on November 9th. But WordPress, which is the content management system, powered almost every political website during the 2020 political election cycle. And the reason why I mention that is because if you're teaching a web design course in your school or district, and you have the ability to bring WordPress into your classroom, and something we're working on right now at my home program. We don't have the ability right now. It's a little complicated why, but that's our eventual goal to utilize WordPress as a design precept. You're missing out on what powers most of the world's content websites. And I know, Wes, you've utilized WordPress. I've utilized WordPress. It runs actually not just websites at MTDA. It also runs one of our content management systems, delivers contents to students. But it is such an amazing open source platform that if you're not playing with it, or if you're not utilizing it, or if you're a hobbyist and you want to know more about web design, WordPress is really the place where it's at. And a lot of people don't know how many websites run via WordPress. In fact, EdTech SR is a WordPress site. WordPress is pretty great.
Absolutely. And I guess the thing that I've experienced, you mentioned hacks. I mean, the level of hostility, malware, bad stuff on the web. I mean, you have to amp up your security game as a user today with passwords, for instance, but also when it comes to web stuff. And, depending upon where you're at, it may make sense to pay a few bucks a month and have somebody, worry about all of that stuff. I have had to navigate some hacks before, and then pay people who are a lot geekier than me, to clean that stuff up. So back your stuff up. That's a big lesson. That's not just applicable to WordPress. But I saw that article too, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, how many websites are powered by open source? Open source Linux, is I think it's still over 50% of the web servers in the world, and WordPress and other kinds of products. So there's another plug for, open content, open source software, not just assuming that everything, has to be this is in the week of ISTE, right? Not everything has to be a vendor paid thing. There's phenomenal capability that's out there, and the free and open source, or FOSS, software movement is alive and well, and there's a lot of benefit. So, Eric, were you an Audacity podcaster back in the day, or what was your tool of choice?
Audacity, yep. Edited everything Audacity, yep. Yeah,
and it's still going strong. I
still use it to edit stuff every once in a while. So
me too.
I've been using, there's an online one called Twisted Wave. In fact, Friday I'm going to start a family oral history project because I'm in my second trimester with kids. And I was pleasantly surprised because I've used Audacity for so long too, but it's web-based and kids can save right to Google Drive. And, and it even lets you do Amplify, for those, or, in little editing and stuff like that. So
Twisted Wave has come a long way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's phenomenal. My kids did all of their podcasts and audio interviews on Twisted Wave, which turned out great. All right. Let me hit one more security one really quick, and then we'll see if there's anything else. This is about Telegram. This is from Vice on November 25th. 5 reasons you should delete Telegram from your phone. When it comes to secure messaging, this is something that is not as maybe visible to everybody because it's under the hood kinds of stuff. Is your data being encrypted? But WhatsApp, is owned by Facebook, but all of the WhatsApp messages are encrypted by default. That is not the case for Telegram. And this is really the best blow-by-blow description I've read in an article about why, if you're thinking about using some kind of messaging app other than just text messaging, which, by the way, is a good idea, because text messaging that is not encrypted. iMessage can be, but regular text messages are not. The 5 reasons that the author highlights here is chats in Telegram aren't encrypted automatically end to end. They have access to your contacts and your metadata, which can have a lot of information. They really don't moderate content. So Nazis, conspiracy theorists, it's the Wild West in terms of moderation. The groups and channels, they say, are not safe. And it's also not forthcoming with journalists. And, anyway, their conclusion is to ditch Telegram. So I think that Edward Snowden, who knows a little bit about security, has, come out real strongly against Telegram and in favor of Signal. I have both of these apps. I really don't use them that much. The summer conference that I went to last year, ironically, one of them chose Telegram as their messaging app. And I was kind of like, I don't know if we're modeling, best practice as far as privacy and security. So are you guys using any of those apps and have any thoughts about them? No.
I do not.
Okay. There you go. There's a quick answer.
I will mention one thing. I've gotten a little addicted to TikTok, and it's kind of embarrassing, but I installed it just because I wanted to understand it a little better. I had a parent a couple weeks ago tell me that, and it was almost in jest, so I didn't laugh at the comment at the time, but I just don't know why my kid's not participating more in this online course. They're on TikTok 6 hours a day, and I know that there was all those security questions about it, and so I downloaded it because I was curious. And there's a large teacher contingency on TikTok. There's a large people that barbecue and make pizzas, and there's private plane TikTok, which is super interesting, and whatever topic you want, there's probably people creating content there. But I keep wondering to myself, that was a security risk that was supposedly so significant that they were telling, people on military bases, don't have TikTok on your phone. Right? If you were a military personnel, delete TikTok because it has all these security problems. I'll be honest, I still can't figure out, other than location data, right? And I guess maybe what you're into. So spoiler alert, it's a lot of cooking recipes for me, and also some light political stuff. But the bottom line is that, this security holes, and I trust that the government is warning for a reason, right? But the bottom line is that security threats could really, be associated with any kind of app.
It has to do with the surveillance state and the rise of China and facial recognition. The amount of data that is being sent in via that app and the way those servers. The company that owns that, the Chinese company, is not a social media company. They are a facial recognition company. So it's pretty fascinating. And I think years from now, we'll probably be reading about the success story of the Chinese coders, who are able to leverage so much data from the West, via this app that has taken off like wildfire. Because it is the most popular app among the middle school kids. Of course, they're playing Among Us now. That's a super popular game. I think it's even more than Fortnite, and Roblox is big with my 5th graders. But yeah, it's huge, and I've only dabbled in it a little. So Peggy says it is a very creative app. So, and it's free. So, but it's one of these apps that if you're not paying for it, you're the product. And, are we going to be, in some way harmed by the fact that we're the product for that? That's the topic of the Social Dilemma documentary. So go watch that on Netflix. Right.
Well, and for the record, one of the ways I knew I had to delete the stupid app off my phone is someone was promoting an Amazon product. I was like, I need that. And so I went and bought it. And I was like, oh, God, no, please, no. You gotta let it alone. And I've literally lost an hour and a half to it once. I'm just flipping through, and the logarithm's really good. And then literally I look up and I'm 90 minutes into the stupid app. So
that's called doom scrolling. So,
yeah. Yep.
Eric, how do you and your wife navigate the parental side of social media in your home?
So our youngest daughter had TikTok and she took it off her phone. I see TikTok videos on Twitter all the time. So I guess if it's viral enough, it's going to go to Twitter, and that's where I spend most of my time. So I tend to kind of be a one platform. I do stuff on Facebook, I guess, a little bit, but Twitter is where I spend most of my time. So.
All right. Well, it is the top of the hour. I think we need some Geeks of the Week. So, Jason, you want to kick us off with what you got this week?
Yeah, I'm 99% sure I've already shared this, but hey, it's a 200th episode, so why not do a throwback? This is the time of year where I love buying like nerdy stocking stuffers for friends and family. In the past, I've bought things like cables for colleagues, and nothing says I love you from a techie person than a high quality cable. And there is so much junk on Amazon, especially if you're utilizing lightning connectors or USB-C charging. It can be dangerous to your device and actually to you physically to use an off-brand cable. And if I am not otherwise checking into the cable itself, the go-to brand name on Amazon is Anker, Anker. It's great stuff. They make a wide variety of things. And if you're looking for techie stocking stuffers, a good quality nylon braided USB-C cable from Anker is really a must-have gift. So Anker.com, you can see all the products that they offer. It's everything from charging cables to power banks to power strips, docking stations, really great stuff. I'm a big fan of Anker, and it's an easy recommendation to give to others.
And if you are with Anchor and would like to sponsor the show, you can talk to us later because that was entirely unsponsored.
EdTechSR.com.
That's right.
That's the brand I buy for all of our like chargers for the car, cables. We've bought power strips from them and always been happy with it. So.
Yep. And I would say I've also purchased their USB-C, or not USB-C, their Bluetooth headphones as well. And we've moved away from USB headsets at work towards Bluetooth stuff because it's cheaper, and plus the USB-C headsets now are not super great. These are also really high quality. The brand name there is called Soundcore. That's Anker's Bluetooth line. Super great stuff.
Awesome. Well, Eric, you got a Geek of the Week for us?
Well, I mean, I was just scrolling through here and I saw you guys put a link about China's lunar lander, and I'm a big space geek. I'm a NASA Smithsonian educator. I'm on their cohort thing, but so I'm always watching like launches and all that kind of stuff. So I did watch it launch the other day, and they're getting some great images back. I know there was kind of a controversy at first. I was watching online, like, did it land? Did it crash? But it looks like they're doing a great job of getting some samples. And I think that it's just fascinating to see another country besides the United States. We tend to just be so focused on what the United States is doing with space, but that I believe they've got land. They're now landed on both sides of the moon, I believe, right?
Yeah, they got 3 active rovers on the moon now.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's just kind of a cool story to see what they're doing and how they're going to get it back. And so that'd be
absolutely
my week. So.
There you go. Well, thanks for pointing that out. I dropped the Ars Technica article that we did have in there, and it says the zoomable image that they shared, I guess, yesterday has 15,000 by almost 8,000 pixels. So incredible detail. And the big test is going to be tomorrow on Thursday, because it is they've been scooping up material. And so tomorrow they're going to launch a small spacecraft to return. And if everything goes well in the next couple of weeks before, 2021, they're going to be the first country to return samples from the moon in 4 decades. And the only countries that have successfully, launched something back from the surface of the moon is the Soviet Union and the United States. So absolutely. I'm going to share that as a wonder link with my kids, I think, this in upcoming days.
If you have
All right.
Apple TV, there's I don't know if you guys have seen the what's the series on Apple TV. It's about
the one about if the Soviets beat us.
Yeah,
the red moon. Is it Red Moon?
It's not Red Moon. Gosh, what is it? I'd have to look it up. But it's a series that Apple TV created, and it's interesting. I mean, it's obviously all fiction, but it's interesting, and they've got a couple different seasons. So if you're into space, that's kind of a cool.
Ooh, and I love the Cold War theme too. How interesting!
Oh yeah.
Well, it's definitely. I mean, that plays out big time. So it's pretty cool.
That's a good reminder because I think we had started that and then discontinued that. All right, so mine quickly is a tweet. This is a pretty incredible drone video of Christmas drones. The only thing I've seen like this for the Air Force Army game a couple years ago at the Air Force Academy, they had just like, I don't know if it was thousands, hundreds, a lot of drones that basically did what looked like a fireworks show. But they had colored LEDs, and so they, did all these different things that were so cool right over the cadet area, at night. And that video I shared as a Wonderlink for my kids. This is, Santa Claus, but of course, we had a leading Iranian nuclear scientist that was killed by, I think, a remotely controlled vehicle this last week, and nobody's claimed credit for that. Probably Israel, maybe the United States involved. So this is cool, but it's just interesting. I mean, this is a classic example of, can be used for good, could be used for bad, but interesting to see a new Christmas light display coming to us via drones. So when you're not here pontificating, Dr. Neiffer, where can folks find you?
I love the Twitter, Tech Savvy Teach, and then I also love to work with the Northwest Council for Computer Education, blog.ncce.org.
All right. How about you, Eric?
I am on Twitter at @elanghorst. That's where I live on Twitter.
And I am W. Fryer on Twitter. Probably will share a few things on my Speed of Creativity blog, probably to include, and I don't know if they'll release publicly the video, but I've got my slides for my media and digital literacy in middle school presentation I'm sharing for ISTE tomorrow. And I'll be tweeting a few more things, and I'm probably going to be consuming a lot more from the ISTE conference after, this week than I've been able to do this week as I have been teaching. But this is the EdTech Situation Room. We want to thank Eric Langhorst so much for joining us for our 200th episode. Great to have Eric back. Maybe we could do a tech shopping cart. We actually did that for a few years, and then that became the EdTech Situation Room. So if you have not already, please subscribe to us on YouTube. You can also subscribe to us on Twitter, which is the best way to find out if we have any kind of late changes to our show. Usually we're here on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Mountain, whatever that happens to be in your particular time zone. Check out all of our show notes as well as very small MP3 audio and smaller video forms of our podcast on edtechsr.com. And you can always ask your favorite smart speaker to play the latest episode of the EdTech Situation Room. Until next time, stay savvy, stay safe, and the holidays are soon upon us, folks. So be safe out there.